My name is Yiğit Zorlu. I'm Business Development Manager at Comstice. We will go through our new platform today called Comstice Quartz. Today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Niamh McElroy. She's the head of business change, focusing on customer experience and the voice of the customer ideas created by Comstice. And Adam McCune, he's our sales director in the United States and Canada. Before we start, I just want to give you a quick update about today's session. There's going to be 4 show and tells, but today's session is more of a taster. It's a 30 minutes session just to show briefly from end to end what does Quartz look like. We've got some deep dives coming in the next few weeks. First reporting and the dashboards, then forecasting and analytics, and then finally we will look at the workforce management piece. But before we go through the demo today, I just want to take you to the transformation we had in the last 15 years in the contact center technologies. 15 years ago, I remember the challenges were different. We were trying to move from hardware intelligent bespoke systems to software intelligent systems, which then moved to virtualization, better integration, and eventually these days moving to cloud. And in those transformation periods, data, managing data, collecting data, presenting data was always secondary. The primary goal was to make the platforms stable, focusing on 5 nines. Probably you remember those days. Data was collected, but wasn't the primary focus. Today, we believe that time has come. There's a lot of initiatives. There's a lot of functionality and the tools available to make data work for us faster, more visual data, automated reporting, and making data more meaningful and accessible. If you look at our value proposition on Quartz, we want to minimize that extracting the data as a CSV file and spending hours and hours on Excel spreadsheets every week kind of process, and free up your workforce time. And by making data more visual, we would like to help you to see the peaks, see the stress points, the customer patience points. And we also want you to be able to run a vast amount of data very quickly, year-on-year data with a click of a button, without waiting, without making a lot of modifications. And more accurate forecasting, there is an AI element, as well as recent enhancements in the statistical algorithms used, created for contact center forecasting. And employee engagement, this is quite critical and quite a popular subject as well, and we will talk about how we approach that piece. So my first show and tell is the Quartz web portal. Let's just go there quickly and start our first show and tell. I'm gonna log in using my account, and the idea of the web portal is, which is one of the Quartz value propositions, is to make the data more accessible. Today, many business stakeholders, including the agents, do not have direct access to their own data. We want those stakeholders to be able to access the data, see their performance, see how they do with respect to the team averages. And the web portal is a common area that we can present some utilities, like estimated calls today, efficiency, break duration information, features like how can we quickly pick up the abandoned calls recently and give them a callback, team chat, and all of the utilities. This common area can be modified, and agents themselves can select the content, and they can look at what's available, and they can kind of modify, and they can also select, deselect available options for them. The second piece that we will look at is the reporting. We will briefly look at how we want to move forward in the reporting side of things. First point I would like to make is we will include all the vendor reporting or stock reports or the canned reports, sometimes called, into our platform. So whatever you've got as reports today, you will be able to access with Quartz as well. I'm showing you the UCCX version of Comstice Quartz, but it also supports UCCE, Avaya CMS, Genesys PureConnect, and PureEngage as well. So one of the things that we've done, we've always used the vendor reports or the vendors' procedures, queries to create our own reports, so that there shouldn't be any data discrepancy. The last thing we want to do is to try to fill the gap between the vendors' reports and ours. So in the reporting, you've got one of the things that we get as a feedback is we can't easily see what the report gives us without looking at the documentation, without running the report itself. So one of the things we've done was we added the report definitions for each report. So before you run the report, you can look at what it means, what it does. Does that give you what you're looking for? Then, if it does, then you can decide to run the report. And when you try to run the report, you've got these filtering mechanisms, the date range, agent or the queue selection, team selection, skill selection, if it's skill related. And eventually, when you run the report, you've got some options. So you can use the data here and create a custom table, which you can use in other areas. And then this also gives you the opportunity to add some new columns on an existing report. So if you want to, for example, add a new column with your sales data, you can do that. You can save the stock report as a personal copy with some preferences. You can create a chart based on that report. You can make the, for example, something like that, and then save that chart afterwards. You can go back to the filter, export in Excel to PDF. Obviously, our goal is to eliminate Excel kind of data modifications as much as we can. And then here you can you can look at lots of controls. You can do the filtering. You can select, deselect the columns. Currently, all of them are selected. One of the things that we've been asked was the summary line. So you can select and add a summary line to the report. And for example, depending on the type of the data, you can just either put the count if it's non-numeric, you can put sum if it's numeric, and certain data like average talk times, you can do weighted averaging, and they automatically pick the weighting mechanism themselves. You don't have to remember how you should weight, and then eventually you see the data over here. What else you can do here is the drill downs. You can click on a particular row and you can drill down into more detailed report. We've got a very comprehensive drill down map. So you can, from one report, you can go to different reports, and eventually you can go all the way down to individual agent level or individual call level. Let's go and have a look at, and eventually you can create a report scorecard like this. This one, by the way, is already included. So another thing that we've been asked a lot is the historical data. How can we visualize the historical data so we can see the trends, we can see vast amount of data visually without making a lot of effort? So we've got three approaches on the historical data. One of the things that, the first thing is the heat maps. Heat map idea came to us by a few of our clients. And they said we would like to see the heat map based on certain data and a certain number of. Let's go this way a bit further. Oh, our data set doesn't show. Okay, so let me briefly explain what the heat map does. It shows a particular key performance indicator for every hour of each week, and it does that for last 10, 12 weeks, for example, and it shows you where you consistently failing, where you're consistently falling short in terms of the resources. It can be done on the call answer rate, it can be done for the FTEs, full-time employee counts, it can be done for service levels, calls received, etc. And that gives you a visual representation of where you stand and where you're falling short. And we also have daily, monthly, weekly, and quarterly data that you can look at, and that shows, for example, in a monthly chart, that shows each month's data very easily. Let's click that, yeah. And then it gives you kind of a visual representation of the last few months. And this could be monthly, this could be weekly, and there is also a drill down option here as well. You can drill down, double click, and then go to the that month. In that case, it shows every day of that particular month, and then you can drill down to the particular day, look at the hours, you can drill down the hours, you can see all the calls coming on that hour, etc. And you can always export these visual reports as a PNG file. There's a PNG option here. And the last one is, I think, the year-on-year data. For example, how can we compare the past year's data? Let's do that here with this year's data. And then let's see if we get something. Okay, so for example, this data shows 2017 to 2018 calls received, and you can also add average handle time or other key performance indicators which you think might make sense to see the trend. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to see the difference. So the bottom section shows the rate of change, and that might give you an idea of what could be happening in the coming month, for example, based on this trend that you followed, what to expect moving forward. And calls received and average handle time are two key indicators for used often for forecasting. So I think they are quite important. It's quite important to see a report like this so that you can kind of use this in your forecasting information. Let's go back and look at the next one. So analytics and forecasting. Obviously, today, based on the surveys in the market, in the industry, around 70% of the forecasting is done by hand, often mostly used on the Excel spreadsheets. We are looking at the ideas of, first, how can we make accurate forecasting? Second, how can we make forecasting automated so that you don't have to run the shifts manually, you don't have to do lots of things manually. In terms of the forecasting, there are three major industry best practice algorithms, statistical algorithms, triple exponential smoothing, ARIMA, and multiple temporal aggregation, which is a new algorithm, I think 2015. These algorithms are good because since this is an on-premise solution, you don't necessarily need high processor power, high processing power to run these algorithms. They're relatively lightweight to run, but at the same time, they are specifically designed for contact center industries. They are not used for anything else. So in that sense, they are kind of tried and tested, and that might be helpful. But obviously, AI is everywhere, and AI-based forecasting is also available. Quartz integrates with the TensorFlow and Amazon Forecasts services in case you would like to run your data on cloud-based AI-focused prediction networks. Here, what we do is we make your data anonymous so that these platforms will not know your customers' IDs, identities, will not know your business's identity, and they won't even recognize that this is a call center related data. You will just send some certain numbers and expect some forecasts behind that. So in a way, the data privacy we can achieve, data privacy that you're looking for, we can achieve. And the next one is my show and tell about the workforce management. Workforce management is a vast topic. I'll just briefly touch base what you can do in terms of you managing the shifts, and I will also go through the mobile app for Quartz and how it can help on the workforce management side of things. So on the shift scheduler, you've got list of schedules that you can manage, you can monitor, you can see each shift member, and then you can also run a shift distribution to see what's happening on each day, each hour, how many agents are included in the shift for each skill. So here, each of these items are skills, and then we see how many agents are available on every hour of every day for each skill. And then if you prefer, you can create a new shift and you can bring those people and set their start and end times and then manage their kind of expectations manually. But obviously our goal is to automate this by getting the feedback from the forecasting, which is the demand, and getting the feedback from the agents, which is the supply. What agents are looking for, which times of the day they can start, which times of the day they would like to finish, and how long they want to work, and if they need to take an unexpected break, how can they notify us if that happens? How can we kind of rerun the shift quickly and try to invite other agents? And if there is an overtime required based on that, how can we notify the workforce that there's an overtime required? And how can we manage all this process automatically? So this is the mobile app, which is designed for agents and the supervisors. In its first section, agents and the supervisors, they can see their actual reports. And these are the historical reports, so they can come here and select the date as well. And based on the date, they can see their data. There's more options here, so they can look at the daily data, they can look at the weekly data, so they select each week, or they can select the monthly data, and based on the selection of the month, we show the monthly data and then the weekly data is shown based on the week that they select. And then, as you can see, start and end of the week is visible here. Then they can manage their schedule. So based on that, they can look at every day, each date, and look at what they've been scheduled for, their start time, if there's a team meeting. Probably team leaders create those meetings, and then based on their break allowances and the team availability, their break durations or break locations, break times will be located in their shift. And when the time comes, we will notify the agents from various channels, from the web portal, from their desktop application, or and as well as the mobile app that they are using as a mobile push notification. And this is aligned with automatically aligned with the shift and the resource requirements. And for each date, they can go back and check their details. The team alerts is a way to communicate with the team members. They can be related to the queue information, calls waiting information, or they can be related to kind of the overtime requirements based on recent real-time changes in the staff availability. Whatever the screen push notification we send, they will also be available here as an alert. And then finally, the team member can manage her preferences from here when they would like to start, which the earliest and latest start time of the day, and what's the minimum maximum shift time they would prefer. Are they open to overtime? And based on that, how can we obviously manage their overtime in the background? They can add manage all their preferences from here. And based on this data, the shift manager will automatically redesign the shift. And if we need an overtime and there's people who are open to get some overtime, we will give them extra shift hours, and eventually we will finish their time here. And this is pretty much what I've got. As I said, this is a very quick taster around what we are trying to achieve in the Quartz. It's a reporting, analytics, and the workforce optimization solution. There are a few questions that I'm looking at, and if you have any others, please feel free to send me. So one of the questions about Quartz is the platform. The platform itself, I'm not going to go too much into the technical architecture, but it's a Linux-based platform, very similar to the Wallboard. And the idea is we get a snapshot of certain data for faster reporting and the dashboarding, but we don't get a full replica of your data. So the replication is a tedious process. We avoid that technical limitation, but your data, your reports should be faster than what you have today, especially the dashboards. In terms of the licensing, it's licensed based on the number of agents that you're planning to report against. You can have as many sessions as you prefer. As I mentioned, we encourage you guys to use the mobile app, the web portal on the agent level, team leader, executive level, and you don't have to be supervisor or agent. You can be an executive as well, but you can still have an access. The access can be fully controlled by the administrators. So you can decide which content, which utilities, which tools, which features, which agents, which queues each user is permitted to see. And there was another question here. This is an on-premise solution, so there's nothing in the cloud. So what's the difference between Comstice Quartz and generic reporting platforms like Tableau or Kulik, etc.? Because you will probably get some questions from the finance department about, we are already paying for Tableau. Why do you need this platform? Obviously, this is specifically designed for contact centers. It comes with a lot of stock reports. It's not just the Cisco stock reports. We also have the Comstice stock reports, which are kind of the industry best practices that we got from our customers, and that can be something interesting for you, because lots of things, lots of reporting needs are quite similar to there are some differences in businesses, but there are a lot of common areas as well in the contact center practice. Comstice stock reports will help us to get a very interesting idea from one customer and share with the rest of the community. So this is, for example, one of the stock reports, which is quite visual, that you can use as part of your own reporting kind of content. You can see easily each time interval, how many calls they answered, how many calls they abandoned. This is for the abandoned one. And you can kind of sense the customer's patience index. So you can see that in the second interval, you lost 73% of the calls. So 73% of the abandoned calls, they're actually lost within 120 seconds. And similar things available for the answered calls as well. So you can see the answered calls for the selected dates, how they kind of get distributed. And you can see that most of the calls that are answered, 90% or 90% of the calls that are answered in our sample data set, they are answered within 30 seconds, which is great. So these sort of things, ability to visualize these and being able to use those reports in your visual reports that you can create using our report designer is quite powerful. This tells a lot of things about your performance, and instead of doing lots of number crunching, you can easily see how you perform. So that can be something quite useful. Any other questions? We've got just 1 minute to go. So in terms of what we would like you to take home today, it's a very short session. It's a taster session. We try to cover a lot of the information, but what I want, we would like you to remember 3 things about this session. Comstice Quartz is visual. There's a lot of data. We visualized it. We made it, one click of a button kind of reporting. It is accessible. It's accessible by the agents. It's accessible by the team leaders and the other stakeholders. And it's meaningful. So when you look at the data, instead of seeing lots of numbers, you see something positive and negative, and you see some peaks, you see some good news, you see some bad news, and based on that, you can easily take an action. You don't have to spend a lot of time to see this picture. You can easily see it through Quartz. So the time you saved, you can spend by kind of optimizing the performance. I hope this was useful. As I said, it's a taster, and hopefully we will see you in the upcoming webinars. And thanks very much for your time, and hope to speak to you guys soon.